morning, everybody, and welcome to BT Tower. I'm thrilled to welcome you all on behalf of BT Group. Our Pride Network, Mark and Talon, if you can give us a wave, are our chairs of the Pride Network, and I'm here on behalf of our Gender Equality Network here at BT Group. It's really important to all of us that we hear and amplify the voices of women and non-binary people, and we're honoured to host today's event to continue our journey and do that even more, and play our part in doing just that. There's a really fabulous agenda today lined up, and I'm really excited to learn lots and hear from some really inspiring people. It's also a great opportunity to network and form new connections when we head upstairs later this afternoon, and the weather's been great to us. There's some blue sky out there, so you should have a really good view, arguably the best view of London up there today. So I'm now going to hand over to Nancy Kelley, Director of Lesbian Visibility Week, and I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Nancy, my pronouns are she, her. I'm the Director of Lesbian Visibility Week, and welcome to the Lesbian Visibility Week Workplace Conference. Woo! This is an incredible way to be kicking off Lesbian Visibility Week 2024, and it's a much needed space for LGBTQIA plus women and non-binary people to network, to think, to reflect together. I want to say huge thank you to our small but mighty Lesbian Visibility Week and Diva team who makes everything happen every day of Lesbian Visibility Week. They're all looking shy over there, so if you can just clap all the people that never get a clap, that would be amazing. And I also want to say an enormous thank you to Mark and Mario and all of the team here at BT Group and at the Tower who could not have been a more generous, more accommodating and more positive hosts. So big thank you for all of this. And of course to all of you and everybody that will be speaking today and everybody that will be hosting panels. I feel so excited to listen to the conversations and listen to all of you connecting and thinking together. So Lesbian Visibility Week was founded 4 years ago by the amazing and iconic Linda Riley, who's with us today. It's a global event and it seeks to celebrate LGBTQIA women and non-binary people everywhere and make lesbians more visible. And this year, we are uplifting LGBTQIA women and non-binary people in every generation, in every field and in every country around the world. We are celebrating a community that is unified, not uniform. And we're starting here today by focusing on the world of work. We're going to be thinking about what it takes to survive, thrive and build our careers. We're going to be taking a long, cool look at how far we've come and how far we still have to go to create workplaces where everybody can be welcome and free to express our authentic selves. Because we know we are not there yet. Today we're releasing new data from the Diva survey with Kantar, and it shows that while for many of us, workplaces are so much safer than they used to be, for a significant minority, workplace safety is still a really distant dream. Do you mind doing that? That's my alarm. I feel really bad now. It's my medication alarm, thanks. I'm just going to miss my medication. So 3/4 of LGBTQI women and non-binary people we surveyed agreed they could be themselves at work. But 11%, that's more than 1 in 10, said they couldn't. They couldn't come to work and be themselves. So in 2024, that's a big chunk of our community that just doesn't feel welcome. 2/3 of the LGBTQ plus women and non-binary people we surveyed said they felt safe. More than 1 in 10 said we're not safe. We're not safe when we come to work. 3/4 of the people we surveyed said they felt socially accepted, included. But 8% felt pushed to the margins and left out. And 3/4 of the LBQ women and trans people that we surveyed told us they felt like they got the same opportunities to advance. But 13% said no. We see discrimination at play. For us, it's still twice as good for half as much. So this data tells a really positive story about LBQ plus women and trans people who are increasingly comfortable, increasingly able to feel out in their workplaces. For many of us, feeling safe, accepted, being treated fairly has become a norm, and that's an indication of just incredible progress over recent decades. We should feel proud. But for a significant minority of us, for more than 1 in 10 of us, work is not safe, is not accepting, is not fair. Work is a place where you can never let your guard down and you can never be yourself. Why? Because more than 12% of the people we surveyed told us they'd witnessed or experienced inappropriate conduct, inappropriate comments, and 1 in 10 had witnessed ongoing verbal harassment. And though it's thankfully rare, 1% of LBQ plus women and trans people said they'd witnessed physical and sexual harassment at work, and 2% reported sexist and sexual comments. So that big of a group in our community feeling unwelcome, being locked out of opportunity, being unsafe is unacceptable. We all have the right to safety and dignity at work. We all have the right to be treated fairly. We know that when LGBTQIA women and non-binary people bring our whole selves to work, we thrive and our organisations benefit from our creativity and our energy. But we cannot just wait for the world to catch up. We have to shape the world around us like we always have. Today's conference is about sharing insights, building connections, and powering us forward into a world in which every single LGBTQIA woman and non-binary person can come to work and be recognised, welcome, and supported. Let's go. So I have the great opportunity now of introducing our morning keynote speaker, who is actually one of my heroes, she's pulling a face at that, but she is, the incredible Airey.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm going to grab some water, and then I'm going to grab my glasses, because I'm so old I can't see very well. I've worked around here for a long time, actually, best part of 30 years. Not quite started out my career, but I worked in Channel 4 in Charlotte Street about 30 years ago. And I never, ever, ever thought I'd ever come into the BT Tower, but there we are, I finally made it. So, listen, I'm Airey, and I'm really thrilled to be opening this workplace conference. Now, I don't think you can get much more visible than the BT Tower. It's interesting, it's called the BT Tower. It was formerly known as the Post Office Tower, but obviously you want to distance yourself from the Post Office. And I suspect there's never been quite so many lesbians, or certainly at the top of this tower, which I believe is where we're heading. Yeah, thank goodness. Later, I thought I was going to be doing this at the top of the tower, so being at this level is not quite what I expected, but I'm really looking forward to going up there. Because let's face it, this is an extraordinary building. And does anyone know what its primary purpose was? Going to ask questions. It's not just Keynote, it's going to be interactive. Do you know what its primary purpose? Communication things from the top. Yeah, that sounds sort of right. What's down the bottom, sorry? Yeah, there is. Now, what is really interesting, this was when it was built in the 60s, it was the centre of the microwave network from which the whole of the country was communicated from. So you could only make your phone stuff work, not wireless, through here. So this was the centre of communication. And I think that's rather fitting that we're here today communicating to the world that diversity should be at the epicentre of all societies. I like unity of time and place, so I like the fact that 60 years ago, this is what it was here to do. 60 years on, we're here doing this. And then it becomes a hotel, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, you know the world is changing, because when I got out here, I saw, oh, the BT Tower's over there, and I looked up, and there it was, the colours of the flag pulsating around London. And like I said, BT have chosen to leave this prominent landmark, and the hotel group who bought it, I hope are going to continue with the tradition that I certainly saw in New York. And you see it here with the BT Tower, which is using big, public, iconic buildings to amplify social and societal good. If you think about the Empire State Building, it's constantly lit up with colours that represent something that's very important to New York, to the American society. And I've got a feeling, actually, that with Heatherick Studios involved in the reimagining of this building, that hopefully we'll get something very special, but it must continue as a beacon for London, for the country, for the world, off Tottenham Court Road. So first of all, thank you, BT, thank you, Mark, and thank you for all the sponsors who've made this conference possible. A conference about the world of work, how it's changing, how we navigate it, how we thrive in it, and how we make it as productive, enriching, and as inclusive as possible. So I'm going to, again, be a bit interactive. How many of you in this room have been working for 30 plus years? Oh, that's about 20% of you. Thank you. 20 plus years. A little bit less. 10 plus years. Oh, the younger youth. Less than 10 years? Wow. Okay. Well, hopefully you're going to learn a few things today. So I'm going to put my hand up and say, I've been working more than 40 years, so I can be carbon dated. And I come from what I call sort of the working period of the Cro-Magnon man, or the life on Mars years. Now, for those of you under 20, that will mean nothing. For those of you who've been working for more than 20 years, that will probably mean something. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's really quite simple. The world was a very, very, very different place when I started working. And to get on in the 80s and 90s, you simply knuckled down, you took instructions, you replicated what your invariably male boss did, you worked every waking hour if you wanted promotion, and you were probably, of course, more talented than your male counterparts who were being promoted ahead of you. And as a woman, you braced yourself for all those sexist references, and they came. The put-downs, the banter. You were prepared. You had to be prepared for unwanted advances because we all had them. And women were in the main, and these are generalizations, but they are. This is my truth. This is my experience. I'm not saying it's everybody's. This is my experience. Women were in the main simply workplace fodder, even in a relatively enlightened industry like the entertainment business. I was regularly called the C word, but that, I was informed, was a term of endearment. If you dared be different, female was the boundary of diversity. But a lesbian, a gay, a person of colour, trans, intersex, you would have been deep in the recesses of a closet, because being your authentic self was probably never an option. But there were folks who dared to be different then, and they were true pioneers, and we stand on their shoulders. Now, when I tell my 13-year-old and 17-year-old daughters about my early workplace experiences in television in the 80s and 90s, they're bemused and ask, well, why did you put up with that shit, Mum? And I thought, that's a really good question. Why did I? Being the butt of constant sexist jokes, vile commentary, I fought back in a way that I was used to. I was educated at a boys' public school, so I was very perfectly capable of dealing with little boys. And I did so by flinging back the insults and being exceptionally good at my job. I was called, and this is interesting, Scary Airey, Zulu Dawn. Why? Because I had the temerity not to be cowed. I was regularly accused of being a lesbian because I was feisty. And annoyingly to those men, really annoyingly, I couldn't be ignored. I became the first female and youngest planner in ITV, the first and only female commissioner at the ITV Network Centre, the first ever female CEO of a terrestrial PSB channel, the first ever female and MD of Sky Channels, not sport, of course. Only a man can be in charge of sport. And sales and digital at Sky. And I tell you this as not some sort of brag, but because I've been in leadership positions for decades, and I've got deep experience and plenty of scars that go with challenging the status quo and being different. But there was one aspect of my life where I was neither open nor challenging. I was so far in the closet, I was in Narnia. Yeah, obviously, I mean... I love C.S. Lewis, but obviously I'm so bloody old. If I made a reference to Harry Potter, you know, those the under 30s will get it, but But the truth was, in all aspects of my professional life, I was driven, I was honest, I was achieving. But inside, I was lost and afraid, to be honest, to reveal my true self. But I also believed that that was my business and no one else's. And I still believe that personal privacy is paramount and absolutely and utterly should be respected. I was also shit scared. I was shit scared that coming out would be a break on my career. And it was a risk, to be frank, I was not prepared to take. But the delightful Sunday Mail decided to out me. So that was that, and thank goodness that was over 20 years ago. And how far we have come in this country. Who would have thought that this small little island would be leading the way on inclusive rights globally? Because we are. And how fortunate we are to live in modern Britain, unlike 64 countries where differences are legal and who you love can result in you being imprisoned, even executed. We've come a long way, but this movement is not done, and it's not done until there's global decriminalisation. Now, this conference is about the workplace and leadership, and I appreciate you're from different levels in your organisation, but of all, I am assuming all of you are aspiring to be better and the best leaders that you can be. Well, you're here, and that's a commitment to your lifelong journey of learning. And a key characteristic of any leader is a lifelong curiosity, a desire to learn, a desire to be challenged. And you're going to make new friends here, I hope, today. And one thing that I found absolutely invaluable over my career are the friendships you make, the networks you have. They're so, so important. Support each other, advocate for each other. Aside from my first break in television, all of my roles, all of the opportunities I've had have come from my network. So build those networks, invest in them. They will give you not only immense satisfaction, opportunity, they'll also give you support when you need it. Never, ever, ever forget the power in solidarity. Find yourself a mentor. Be a mentor. It's an essential part of leadership. A safe space for you, because leadership is lonely, it can be lonely, and we all need advice. You don't have all the answers. I would have loved an LGBTQI mentor in the early days of my career, but I couldn't find one. That was until I met my missus. And look around you today, make those connections. Now, Nancy asked me to share some personal stuff, some of my personal journey with you. Like I said, I've done a lot of things. So I'm going to pull out themes that worked for me and I hope will resonate or possibly help you. I worked ridiculous hours. I don't think you ever get on and reach the top of organisations unless you put in a lot of work. I tried to make myself invaluable to all those I worked for. I was loud, I was visible, I was good at what I did, I took risks, because in business you absolutely, and I would argue in life, you do need to take risks, albeit calculated risks. I worked out very early on what I liked and what I was good at, and that was the intersection of creativity and business. I had a sort of knack for leadership. I was always interested in people and made sure I knew everybody in the room, from the front desk to the post room to the boardroom. It was the right thing to do for the business, but I was also genuinely curious about individual stories and dreams. I care about people. I do. I continue to. Leadership has basic tenets that you need to get right. They're very, very simple, and it's amazing how many people get them wrong. You need a vision. At Getty Images, where I was the CEO, we had a simple vision. It was uniting. It was unifying. It had a higher purpose. And it was not to sell photographs. It was to move the world with images. That was our higher purpose. Every company, best companies have a higher purpose. At Sky, we believed in better. At NASA, you may well know this anecdote, but I love this anecdote. When JFK visited the NASA base, he said to the car park attendant, "So what do you do?" And he said, "I'm putting a man on the moon." That's unified culture for you. Having clarity of KPIs, what is expected of you? Tell me what I need to do, how I'm assessed, really important. Give those who work for you support. Give them feedback. And understand and analyse mistakes. Allow mistakes to happen. Mistakes do happen. You don't vilify people, you learn from those mistakes. Give folks autonomy. Let people get on and do what they're paid to do, and pay well. Don't interfere, empower, and provide an environment that you would like to work in. Take work seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. Risk-taking, you've got to do it. And for me, I like risks. The reason why I've done a lot of things in my career is I like change, and I like starting things new, and I like things that are broken that need to be put back together in a different way. And a really, really, really important thing, and hopefully this resonates with all of you, because if you don't love what you do, you're unlikely to excel in it. And then a final thing, which is really, really, really important, not just in work, but in life overall. Be kind. Always be kind. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Be generous. In leadership, your responsibility is absolutely immense. But there are really probably only 2 things you really need to do to be successful. You've got to create a strategy that all your time and effort is focused on. Do not allow yourself to be diverted with somebody else's agenda. Have a clear strategy and just focus on that. Strategies change. You should challenge that strategy, but be very, very, very disciplined with your time. And the other is about employing the best people and communicating well with them. Always employ the best people you can. If you employ giants, you're going to get a giant performance. Employ people who are better than you. Employ people who want your job. Employ people who are going to challenge the organisation. Because if you do that, you're going to bring people with different skills with you. Share that common purpose, that strategy, and communicate, communicate, communicate. You cannot communicate enough. I always said, when I led organisations, communication, absolutely essential. But actually, you're born with two ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. Use them in equal proportion. Listen and observe, and then communicate in equal proportion. I led Channel 5 twice. I started off as the creative director when we founded the channel. And there was a certain amount of dismissiveness from the establishment about Channel 5. We didn't care about that because we liked the idea of starting something new. And against pretty much all odds, we created a business in 4 years that went from 0% share to 6.5% share. We retuned half the nation's video recorders, and we went from 0 to £1 billion in valuation. And we did that because it was a like-minded group of people who wanted to make a difference. At Getty, I reset the company strategy, again, through listening, observing, and opining. And I involved all staff. The company, whilst a world leader in imagery, had not grown, and they needed to understand what was going wrong. The organisation knew the answers. I just had to go around and get them to communicate and tell me what I sort of instinctively knew. And then we started this movement and got it back to growth. And Getty was interesting because I was very out then. And the company really enjoyed having a gay boss. And it gave encouragement for everyone to be themselves at work. And a lot more diversity came out of the woodwork as a result. And our talent pipeline of applications was like the colours of the lesbian visibility flag. Small changes can have very significant effects. I always say, and you've probably heard this many times before, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And it's a phrase we used at Getty when we consciously embraced authenticity. We decided we're not going to represent any more photoshopped pictures of anyone. We actively sought the diversity that I see in this room. And we challenged perceptions of, for example, what women at work would look like. We ensured every search set for humans included diversity on the first set of results. Search marriage, not a heterosexual sea of images. Search women at work, we're on building sites, we're leading in the boardrooms. You as leaders have an absolute obligation to constantly challenge yourself, your organisation. Diversity is absolutely the right thing to do. It's now a legal obligation in this country. And really importantly, it delivers superior performance because difference is an agent of positive change. And communities, the sisterhood, stick together, offer each other support. I also think, and sometimes this is seen to be controversial, that you force change with quotas if you want to make change fast. And I think maybe as leaders, and you will know in the organisations that you're in, you might need to do this. We very forcibly changed staff visibility at Getty Images because we wanted people to be able to see it, because if they can't, then you're not actually trying sufficiently hard. It's amazing how many boards I sit on and organisations when we come to recruiting senior staff, and I look at it and I think, this is a homogeneous list of folks. Where is the diversity? We can't find it. I go, there's 8 billion people on this planet. Go look harder, headhunters. Don't be lazy. And beginning to see that change. But quotas can be seen to be controversial, but they do force change. And it's interesting because I look at my kids and I look at today's youth. You're going to have multiple roles. Those of you who are younger in this room, you are going to have, I think, the average centennial or millennial are going to probably have at least 8 to 9 different jobs. You're not tied, you're not loyal, you have different expectations, and it's about what can you do for me rather than the organisation saying, what can you do for us? And diversity statistics, environmental credentials, they're all critical barometers to attract the best people. You ask the question, what are you going to do to get the best out of me? That's a really good question. And centennials, millennials, hopefully everybody in this room, I like to think we're blind to homogeneity. And when I look at my kids, they're inclusive, they're kind, they are the woke generation, and woke is used, in a provocative way. But I think it represents a really positive evolution of humanity. It's amazing what they do and how they do it and how kind and generous and supportive and genuinely non-discriminatory they are. I think it's unbelievably exciting because they're so demanding and they've got unbelievably brilliant emotional intelligence. And we know EQ is more important for outcomes than IQ. I look at the Lionesses when they won the Euros. It was an extraordinary moment in Wembley. And what's the first thing those women did? What's the first thing they did? They didn't go off and say, okay, it's all about me, let me have big sponsorship deals. They wrote to the Prime Minister and they said they wanted equal opportunities for girls to play sport as boys in school. That is a new generation. Leadership is a privilege. It comes with rewards and it comes with enormous responsibilities. And the greatest reward, certainly to me, is when you're told you've made a positive difference. And a positive difference to all stakeholders, customers, shareholders, colleagues. And let's be clear, there's no superior performance without a collective superior performance. And that comes from a motivated, happy workforce. And that's leadership to me, creating an environment where everyone can be themselves, they're motivated and aligned to the company's strategy, and are happy doing it. Do that, and great things are achieved. It's really as simple and as complicated as that. Thank you.
Thank you, the amazing Dawn Airey. I'm going to invite now our first panel to the stage and introduce my colleague, but also one of my very close friends, the amazing, incomparable Liz Ward.
Thanks, Nancy. I paid her to say that, so that's all right, isn't it? Yeah, I'm actually going to invite our fabulous panellists onto the stage now, and this will be a little bit different, I think, to other panels that you've seen, in that I'm going to remain up here because we've simply got so many people to jam-pack onto this stage. So, Jabeen, Bree, Sarah, come and join us. Jilly, come and join us up here. And we've even got someone online. Can you believe it? It's amazing. There we go. Hi, Margot. Can you hear us? Lovely. I'll get them introduce themselves in a minute, but yeah, round of applause for our fantastic panellists that have joined us up here. So my name is Liz, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm a speaker, facilitator, consultant, working across lots of different sectors in lots of parts of the world. And I say that because I've just come back from a 10-day trip to the US where I was working with football clubs over there. And the theme of the program that we were delivering was leadership. And the pervasive theme that kept coming throughout each of our sessions for these various different football clubs who are in slightly different markets, most of which are in areas of the US where legislation is making lives for LGBTQ plus people even more difficult, which is, the theme was, how do we lead with empathy? How do we lead with conviction? And importantly, how do we lead with love? And it's something that's been ruminating in my brain over the last 10 hours since I was there. But it's something that I think of quite a lot, which is in moments in which our demands from our teams, from the people around us, from the people that we care about, get really, really under pressure. How do we keep that empathy? How do we keep our conviction? And importantly, how do we center love in all that we do if we are to create industries and organizations that are more inclusive than those that preceded them? So that's my kind of little rumination that I want to introduce into the room to start our panel with. But I'm going to, get our panel to introduce themselves, really. And Margot, we'll start with you up there in the sky. A bit like the Teletubbies baby. I don't know if that ever makes any sense. You're like the sun in the sky for all of us. But, I mean, feel free to reel off your CV if you'd like to, but it'd be really great if you could hear a little bit about what you do in the world and maybe just something you do outside of that 9 to 5 as well.
Sure. Thanks very much, Liz. Can you hear me okay?
We're good, all good.
Okay, excellent. So listen, lovely to join you all today, and big apologies that I'm not there in person. I just got back yesterday from India from a work trip, so I couldn't travel again today. But I guess to introduce myself, my day job at the moment, I work for a big global FM company, so facilities management company called ISS, which is based out of Denmark. And I'm heading up globally our diversity, inclusion, belonging, and what we're now calling social sustainability. So that's the day job. We're a company of 360,000 people around the world. So it gives me a great opportunity, I guess, to influence a lot of people and to have an impact. And outside of that, I live in Ireland with my wife, Sarah, and I guess I've probably been involved in so much about lesbian visibility for such a long period of my life. Spent the first half of my life trying to be poked out and pushing myself forward to be visible. And then in the second half, being visible and trying to manage that. And last couple of things, I think I spent quite a lot of time prior to marriage equality in Ireland trying to make sure and support a lot of the NGOs around that. And in the last number of years, I'm involved in some startups. I'm involved in boards, and again, trying to make sure that not only is the subject of diversity inclusion part of board conversations, but trying to be a very visible lesbian who makes sure that I get that as part of our discussions as well. So hopefully that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Margot. Jabeen, I'm going to come to you next, and then we'll go down the line so you know which order I'm going in. Yeah, Jabeen, go for it.
Can you guys hear me okay? I'm not sure if I need to call. So my name is Jabeen Plummer. My pronouns are she, her. I describe what I do as back office activism. Yeah, I can hear myself.
There we go.
So back office activism, and by that I work in the social housing sector, and I'm very focused, and my work is all around how to improve standards, especially following Grenfell. So for me, it's about how we turn our ideals and the legislation into real life policies and practice. How do we bring that to life? I'm also co-chair of a network called House Proud, which operates across the UK and is for LGBTQ plus staff and allies working in social housing. So that's my kind of day job, as it were. And then outside of that, I have lots of things that I like to do, but I think at the moment, something I'm loving is being part of a writing club, and when diaries permit, we meet daily during the week to write and share. So that's I'm enjoying being part of that community.
Nice one, thank you. On to you, Gilly. Fresh off the marathon, I'm hearing.
Not fresh.
No.
Definitely not fresh. So I'm Gilly Flaherty, retired professional footballer. played for Arsenal, Chelsea, West Ham and Liverpool. I am not known for it, but obviously I shared when I was playing football, I shared my story of how I attempted to take my own life because I was struggling to accept that I was gay. So that was a big thing for me to share that to obviously the whole world, really, not just women's football. I'm now doing punditry and commentary for Sky Sports, BBC. I was with The Zone on the weekend as well. And then 3 days a week, I work in a primary school as a PE teacher as well. So I'm a jack of all trades, master of none, as they say. So that's me.
Love it. Thank you. Bree, on to yourself.
Bree, pronouns she, her. I suppose I call my work and my non-work work. So my work is as a barrister, property and private client stuff. I am the barrister commissioner on the Judicial Appointments Commission, which sort of the name tells you what that does. So that's a sort of like being on the board, but also we make the ultimate selection decisions. And I'm also on the investment committee of a social purpose litigation funder. And then my non-work work, I'm head of my chambers, Gatehouse Chambers. That's a lot of work I don't get paid for. And I was on the board of Freehold, which was a property industry professionals LGBT network that's been going now for 13 years. I was a founder of Freebar, which is an LGBT plus network for the bar community, driving change, best practice, etc. And this one always makes me laugh, a bencher at Lincoln's Inn, one of the inns of court. And I sort of stand there and say, why are there only white men on the walls? Can we do something about this? So doing the EDI training, but also just putting myself in the situation to ask the questions. So a lot of my focus is on changing the bar in reality.
Awesome. Thanks, Bree. And finally, last but not least, Sarah.
Thank you. Yeah, Sarah Kenyall. So I work for BT. I'm the Director of Leadership, Learning, Inclusion, Talent and Culture. I nearly tripped myself up there. For BT Digital, so specifically looking at how we transform our business in a digital age. Outside of work, I like to think that my wife and I run a zoo. In reality, we have 4 children that are under 6. Very, very similar. But yeah, so my world is pretty much completely immersed. The eldest is nearly 6. I've got nearly 6-year-old twins, a 2-year-old who's nearly 3, and then a 6-month-old. So you will mostly find me crying, laughing, trying to sleep. Pretty much everything. But I look forward to one day having a sense of self and doing something other than that. I think.
I love that. Inspirational too. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. Bree, I'm going to come back to you now for our first question. And, you know, thinking about your career that you've had in, as you just alluded to, an incredibly male-dominated environment, how has your identity informed your leadership within that? And, was that always an easy journey?
The short answers are it informed the route, the type or style of leadership, the focus of my leadership, and no, it wasn't always easy. So taking each of those, the route, I mean, I arrived at the bar in the mid-80s. The only women I saw around me were doing women's work at the bar, were using either being matron or being quite flirty to navigate a very male, hierarchical, not just male, but public school male space. And I couldn't see myself in any of that. So I guess going back to our keynote speaker, stuck my head down, worked a lot of hours, worked really hard, found ways that played to my strength and made myself indispensable. I was a doer, a deliverer. I would volunteer for things, do things. And because I came in with an ethos that I wanted to do this, but I didn't want to become it. I didn't want it to change me. And I had this sort of naive idea that just by being a different type of person in the space, that might change the space. As I got further in, I sort of realised, no, actually what I need to do is get my elbows and my forearms out. And as I'm creating space for myself, create space for others as well. So I think that was my route to build my influence, build my network, and use that influence and network. And I didn't recognise that as leadership for a long time. I didn't recognise it as leadership until I went on a Stonewall LGBT plus leadership programme. Thought, I'm already a leader. Didn't know that, didn't see that. So that sort of touched on the type as well. You know, I had a long time of feeling like I couldn't see anyone that in any respects tallied with me. I couldn't hear voices that sounded like my voice. When I was in spaces where ostensibly my voice was heard, my idea would suddenly come out of the mouth of a man for 10 minutes later and be a fabulous idea. You know, so that informed the type that I wanted to be a leader that created space for voices, that created space for people who weren't like me, but weren't like that either. And that then is the focus, to make the bar a place where anyone can come if they have the skills and they can thrive, where people can be and give of their best, where people can feel there is a space for them. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah.
Was it always easy? No. Lots of times feeling very alone, feeling very disheartened. I navigated that by finding some allies, some of them straight white men who've been fabulous and supportive. More senior women, rarely. I think often the women who are the very first are so affected by navigating that space that they can't make space for others. They have to protect their territory and what they've created. But yeah, and just whenever someone would, I can remember the day I got silk, a black female colleague came up to me and said, you know, because you're in chambers, I feel able to not straighten my hair and come to work as me. And just that could keep me going for a year. To know that you're actually, again, back to our keynote speaker, making a difference can really drive you forward.
Thanks so much, Brie. I'm really reflecting on, you know, that head-down hustle mentality that we sometimes have in the workplace. Let's just work really, really hard and get that recognition. And then, as you were saying, it hits a point where you're like, actually, I need to look out and see who else I can bring along that journey with me. So, yeah, really appreciate that. Sarah, I'll come to you next on that theme of the challenges that people are facing in the workplace. You know, in your role that you do, you're identifying new talent, top talent, bringing them through on leadership journeys. Do you think some of those same challenges exist for, you know, Gen Z? I learned this new term recently, Gen Alpha. So like your little ones at home, I guess, are Gen Alpha. Do you think the same challenges will exist for those generations in the workplace?
I think yes and no is the short answer. I think systemically we're a long way across all spectrums of diversity from saying that the challenges won't still exist. And I think we were having a conversation earlier this morning with a couple of people around where you live has a huge factor in that. The cultures that you play into, the socioeconomic background. There are compounding factors to all areas of diversity that I don't think we're going to solve within a generation. I know sometimes it can feel 2 steps forward, 1 step back in terms of the progress that we make as societies and in the workplace. But I do think there are different opportunities and avenues for people to be able to feel safe, protected, included as part of the cultures and communities they're from. And actually, Dawn's speech this morning made me think about it, which is the concept of your whole self at work is an emerging trend when we think about talent and leadership. So I would say in the past, even in my career in the past 8 and 10 years, the difference in terms of we create spaces and environments in large organisations to be your whole self. I don't feel like I have a Sarah at home and a Sarah at work anymore. In fact, I refuse to be those 2 things separately. If you don't want all of me, you don't get any of me, is the way I used to think. My dad will often make a joke every time I get a new tattoo of, what if work has a problem with it? Well, if work have a problem with it, it's probably not the right place for me to be working because I'm so much more than a physical presentation of myself. And when I think of the work I do with leadership, with executives and with entry talent, that connection to your purpose. Why do you get out of bed in the morning? I think we're too connected and we're too astute as a culture today to say, I'm just going to go and do the 9 to 5 because I need to and then move on. The aspiration that we have from a career perspective is that we can be all of ourselves. that we can celebrate that we can blend those lines between work and home and everything in between when we think about our own development and our own leadership. So I think challenges will be there, but our ability to hold true to who we want to be, and again, going to Dawn's point, that's based on personal preference as well. That is not to say you have to be all of yourself if that's not what's comfortable. But the self that you want to present, I think there is more and more opportunity as you enter the world of work and as you progress in your career, whether that's hierarchically or across the board, across the spaces, to be who you want to be and for that to be common practice.
For sure, it feels like we're going in that right direction and people are more able to be themselves than they were 10 years ago, but systemic problems need systemic solutions, right?
Yep.
And so those still challenges are still in place. Julie, I'll come to you next. You know, leader on the pitch, leader in terms of being part of the broadcasting world now, which you know is a huge opportunity for being a role model to people. You talked briefly earlier about that piece that went out where you shared your own personal difficulties, which I'm sure, again, was so fantastic for people to read in terms of also feeling seen. What does leadership look like for you, and what does it mean to you in terms of the differences that you've done in your career?
I'd say, like, from young, really, that I was always... I say like leader, I always wanted to be like the organiser and everything. Like I was probably one of the kids in school that people didn't like because I was just like, no, I'll take control of this. And I was always like that. Like I think where I was like there was 4 daughters and I was the youngest one in the house. And when the youngest one never gets heard ever. So I felt like when I come out of that area and into like school and that, I just sort of took responsibility for it. And I think even like in school, I was the only girl really that liked any sport. So then it was sort of, then when we'd done just girls only stuff, like girls football, it was me that was, Judy, you've got to take responsibility for this, you've got to take responsibility for that. So I think I've always had that in a young age. And then I think as I got older, when I was at Arsenal, when there was an opportunity with the captaincy, at the time, the player who was the captain was going through a bit of a bad period. So they said, I was vice captain at the time, so they said like, obviously we want you just to take over that role. And I think initially when you're younger, when you think about captain, you just think of the armband. You think of all the good things that you get when you win a trophy. Yeah, you're the first one to lift it. And that was probably a bit naive at the time as well. And I thought, I'm in a team that's going to win a lot of stuff. I'll be that person lifting that trophy. And then you realise that there's so much to come with it. And I think as I got older, when I went to West Ham and I was actually given the armband and the captaincy, I then realised then at that club that there was so much more to it. We had so much off the pitch stuff and issues that ultimately it was on my shoulders as a captain to deal with that. And I think I was there for 4.5 years, and the first probably 12 months I really struggled with it. I'd say probably the next 12 months I really struggled with it as well. But it was knowing the difference of doing what I needed to do at home, at work, and not taking it home with me. We was in a relegation battle, which I'd never ever experienced in my life. So my anxiety was like through the roof, and there was a lot of drama with the team, like a lot of arguments and people not really clicking. And I was the one who was trying to just sort of mediate and just say, listen, let's sort it out. And I'd obviously always been in teams that were winners. And then it was trying to change that mentality of that club and trying to bring the standards up, but then going home, and then my partner at the time, it was just like Matt, can you put the dinner on? What the dinner on? Will you put the dinner on? No, I've just had a date, this day, like little things like that. And then I eventually learned, listen, leave that at football, come home, and I just learned to completely switch off. But there is a lot of responsibility when you are a leader. There's a lot of responsibility on you, and I think a lot of the time I saw it as it was me that was failing. You know, I think when we was in the relegation battle, my thought was, it's going to look bad on me if we get relegated. And I'm one person in a team of 18 players. But I was like, it's going to be, Julia was the captain, we got relegated. Do you know what I mean? And I never had that in my career. So, yeah, I learned a lot in that year to just sort of, you can be a leader in so many different ways, on the pitch, off the pitch. I'll probably say more about, I was always a leader on the pitch, but I learned more how to be one off the pitch and just be that. You know, sometimes people want to sit at lunch and they want to rant and rave, and sometimes I'll just be that person to listen to, and other times it'd be just to have a laugh and have a joke. But yeah, I'd say I learned more so as a leader as I got older.
Right. I'm just going to stick here for a second. Does that translate now, being a broadcaster? Because it feels like you're kind of, I guess you are part of a team, but it's just you really, isn't it, in front of the camera? Like, is that different?
Yeah, I feel like I've gone into broadcasting and I'm back as that 16, 17-year-old, just like fresh in the game, that I'm just trying to be like a sponge really and just take everything in, because it's not something that I've done before. I've been doing it now for like a year and a half, and obviously the change in me then, from me then to now, I'd like to say I've grown a lot with it. But yeah, I think you're on your own. So, and I've always been like that, as in I've always took care of myself. Like even yesterday, obviously I'd done the marathon and I was meant to run it with someone, didn't run it with them, so I was on my own for a lot of the time.
Wow.
I had like a couple of people there on the sidelines, but there was a bit like around the Canary Wharf. I was like, I could literally just go home now. Like, I had my AirPods in, but I took them out, and you're just on your own. And then like, it's just to get through that, the grit. And I was talking to my mum afterwards. She said like, where I'd always been in a sport where I was never quitting ever. Like I'd have had to crawl over that line. I was never not going to do it. But those moments then where I was like, I feel so lonely at this one place, where it was me against my own head, like fighting with myself. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have done it. Wow. But yeah, I think in broadcast, especially, it's similar. You're on your own. It's dog-eat-dog world out there, especially in broadcasting. Sorry for anyone here who's in broadcasting. But it is. And it's a lot of if you don't have a good performance as such, or you don't look good in front of the camera, or you don't cover a good game, that can affect your work going forward. So there's a lot of that pressure as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's almost like that self-leadership has to come into play, and you're like, right, I am the team of one, so let's go, let's do it. Margot, I'm going to come to you now online. I guess the title of today's session has the word success in it, or successful. And so I wanted to ask you about what success has really looked like for you, would you say? And that doesn't have to necessarily be in the workplace, but even just in general, what successful leadership has looked like. And what are some of the key elements of that success that maybe we could learn from?
Sure. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking about it probably in 3 phases. I think the first part of success was actually just having, an understanding of my own ambition and overcoming my own fears and my own sort of, I suppose, imposter syndrome. Firstly and foremost, I was, coming at sort of trying to find a career and a way in the world and being a leader, coming from a background where I hadn't gone to college initially. I came from a very working class background, and when I one time many years ago lived in the UK, I was Irish and felt very different at the time, and certainly hiding my sexuality at that time was also something that I was having to deal with, and so in those early years, success for me and moving forward was actually about sort of just hard grit and ambition and working really hard and just trying to get ahead and keep my head down, so to speak, and move forward. I think the second phase, both personally and professionally, when I sort of overcame that and realized my ambition, and I'd always wanted to be a leader in an organization, and I became the CEO of an organisation called Sodexo in Ireland. I became the CEO for Northern Ireland and the Republic. And I was the first female, the first Irish person. And it was an amazing sort of sense of success for me. But most important about that, and that phase of my life, which was until about 2018, from 2011 to 2018, was that I was actually able to really, as a CEO, influence and have my voice heard, and also help and support other people. So when I think about success at that time, it was to be an influencer and to bring people into our world. And as a lesbian, because, coming back to the key theme here, I was able to really use my sexual orientation and my unique experience and help draw people like government leaders and business leaders to support the work that we were doing around things like marriage equality. And I suppose moving to the last phase, or at least the current phase, I moved away from that role in 2018 and went into a global diversity inclusion role because I felt that there was something else I could do. There was another phase to me. And now it's about actually really in supporting and empowering other people. It's more sort of a backseat for me, and it's about actually helping others. And that success is also about being an influencer. So I talked about boards earlier on. You know, I'm on things like nomination committees on boards, and it's really kind of challenging what we do and who's included and who's not in the room, and really sort of pushing the boundaries. You know, now success for me is about being feisty and awkward and really kind of challenging the system and not putting up with something that, you know, just doesn't feel right. And I suppose lastly, to create purpose, etc. And your second question was some of those elements of that success. I think for me, it's about seeing the opportunity for people. You know, I think for us all, we can learn about being a leader, but seeing the opportunities, because so many of us come to our early career and we're not maybe always able to see our potential. So, you know, it needs somebody to help you to see that. It's about using your voice and really helping others to hear that. I think we still really need to, and I mean, I'm very involved in the UK as well, and I can see that, you know, we can't stand back. The rights that we've got are being eroded by the moment, and certainly on a wider gender discussion, I think there's a lot that we need to challenge. And using your network, going back to something that Dawn spoke about, our networks and our influence and our friends and those we know both socially and professionally, and using those networks. And I would probably finish with push the barriers. It's really exciting to hear the other women on the panel talk about the barriers they've had and how they've pushed them. So it's to continue to push those barriers and not have any boundaries for any of us. So those are just some of those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. Jabine, I'll come to you next. Now, I love that phrase, back office activism. I might have to be stealing that one for myself, you know, it's a good one. But yeah, thinking of a sector such as housing, which is diverse in lots of ways because of the communities that you're bringing through, especially in a city like London, but also I'm sure has some of those boundaries that we're talking about and some of those barriers that we've discussed today. So my question for you really is, how has being part of the community, as we call it, how has that served your leadership in a sense in a sector such as housing?
I think it's been integral to how I've approached my journey in social housing. Social housing sits at the intersection of so many of my identities. So, for example, almost 60% of people living in social housing are women in terms of head tenants. Within the Black community, that's the highest tenure type. So almost over 40% of all sort of Black families live in social housing. When it comes to homelessness and risk of homelessness, it's a real challenge, particularly for the young LGBTQ plus members of the community. In terms of the service that people receive, there are certain parts of our community, for example, trans and non-binary, that have a much worse experience in the sector. So for me, it's very purpose-driven. It's relevant to me in all of those ways. And what that's taught me is the importance of visibility and representation. So, and it was great in some of the earlier conversations, just the acknowledgement that whilst for many things are easier, there is a significant minority where it's very much not the case. And so what I'm able to do is to be visible. You know, there's still, I don't know if there are many Black, never mind lesbian, but just gays in social housing who people know about, you know, still to this day, which still blows my mind. And so you're able to just be, because that was so important to me in my journey. I came to it late in the day, in my 30s, and having somebody there that you can see, even if you never interact with them, it can be so powerful. And certainly people have shared that with me. There's also the representation part of it and being able to advocate. And so for me, I call it having a voice at the table. So I might not get a seat, but you will hear my voice. You will, and you know, having influence, and that's strategic. There's something, and when I talk about back office activism, it's how do I get my message across? There are those of us who, you know, march and, you know, I've done my time and, you know, talk about it and share about it, but
when all those doors are closed and decisions are being made and policies are being written and we're shaping what it really looks like, I want to be able to be part of those conversations. And I think the community, being part of the community is incredible for me because it's a huge, beautiful, rich tapestry. And with all of my identities, I find with sexual orientation, you get to meet so many different types of people, all different colours, creeds, genders, nationalities, and we get to connect at the intersect of our shared experience. And so what that has helped me to do is to educate me on other experiences. One of the things about having visible, being black, being this, being that, you can think you know. And I think for those of us that are in the space of advocacy, we can sometimes be complacent in our and think we understand more about the issues facing our community than we do. So this has been, in my work with House Proud, working with a lot of volunteer organisations and groups and advocates. I've been exposed to so much more. One of the big examples for me is, for example, the disabled community. And, we talk about diversity, but that's sometimes forgotten, often forgotten, actually. So it's really allowed me to build wider connections, and also the community is very inspiring. The resilience, the commitment to positive change, and the joy. There's a lot of joy in our community. So bringing that sort of energy into my leadership and into the public sector where there's so much, we're tired, we're under-resourced, bringing a new, a bit more energy, a bit more vibe, some purpose. So, I love it. I love it for me, and I think we need leadership with a little bit of vitality, purpose. Let's, bring some energy into what we're doing. So yeah, that's what I find for me.
Love that. Fantastic. Like, how can you be that big cup of coffee for people and just like energize them and feel lifted within some of this work, which can also be really heavy as well. Yeah, for sure. We're coming into the last few minutes of this panel now, but I wanted to throw one last question out to all of you, really, which is whenever I do panels like this and there's rooms of lovely people looking out like this on all of us, the last thing I want people to go home with is something that they can do, someone they can follow, something they can listen to. It can be your own thing, because we want people backing our own things as well. So yeah, is there anything that you'd like people to do, listen to, follow, read after today? I'll start with you, Sarah, seeing as you're closest to me.
See and read children's stuff, so I'm not going to give that. But the point around, use your voice. You don't have to have a seat to use your voice. And I think for me, it's find the thing that brings you joy. How do you use your voice to bring your joy to others? Because there will always be somebody else that's going through the same thing or having the same thoughts or questions that would appreciate hearing it. So don't be afraid to use it.
Awesome. Bree, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think everyone in our community knows what it's like to be alone and to feel powerless. And so thinking about when you have the power and actually stepping forward to make it a bit better for someone else, those small things can create huge ripples.
Nice. Margot, I'll come to you in the sky.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned just a while ago around the diversity of the community, and I think that's something that we want to think about. When you're at a phase in life and you're physically able, and maybe we're all sort of, quite young, we forget all the sort of different ends of our community. And I think to think about, as mentioned, people with disabilities, age, etc. From a point of view of things I'm listening to, I listen to a hell of a lot of podcasts, and I think there's some really, and just go out searching there, and the minute you start searching, you'll find so much more with the gift of AI. And I think lastly is to continue to do storytelling. It's incredibly important for the generations, whatever phase we're at, but to tell the stories and to keep vocal. Thank you.
Amazing. Jilly, what about yourself?
I was going to say listen to my Spotify playlist, but don't, because it ain't that good. But no, I'm actually part of a podcast called Counterpressed, which is based around women's football, but we do, on our Thursday episodes, is more about just like general life and that. Like for Valentine's Day, we had a nice little Cupid match-up sort of podcast, but it's all inclusive as well. We have loads of different people coming on there. So, yeah, if you fancy a listen, it's called Counterpressed.
Yeah, nice one. And Javine?
Yeah, I would encourage us all to learn a bit more about something that's not necessarily us, whatever that looks like. And I think that can bring, I think that will be great for the community, for us to have a bit more understanding of each other.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, everyone. Our wonderful panel.
So thank you to Liz. Before we let the very jet-lagged Liz stop gigging now, thank you very much to Liz. And I want you to really take all of that inspiration from our amazing panel and go into the kind of networking area, get yourself a drink, decompress, and build your network, right? There are so many amazing LGBTQIA women, non-binary people, allies here. Go meet someone you don't already know, and we'll see you in a little minute for the first of our breakout sessions this morning.